Retiarius versus Secutor. Retiarius were equipped with a net, a trident, a dagger, and minimal armor, while the Secutor was equipped with a sword, a large shield, a helmet, and heavy armor. Go ahead, pick one. Murmillo versus Thorax. Murmillo were armed with a larger
what's head looking like?
sword, a helmet, and a metal or leather sleeve for protection, while the Thorax was equipped with a light shield, a curved sword, a helmet, and a metal or leather sleeve for protection. Go ahead.
G-Fan, what y'all pick, bro? Yo, what's up, G-Fan? Welcome back to a new video. Today, we're gonna record again. So before we start, how was y'all day today? I hope y'all day was good. Mine is good, you know, still free from school. So yeah, we're gonna record, you know, get as much out as possible. We're on the grind. So let's get right into the second screen. Alright, for today, we're gonna still do some educational stuff, you know what I mean? It's just so fun to look at, you know, or to watch. So, good enough. The unfair matches of the Roman Colosseum. That's what we're gonna watch. That's what we're gonna watch. Okay, let's start.
Fair and slowly work our way towards the most brutal matchups on the list. Number 10, blind fighters. Andebadia were criminals who would be forced to fight completely blind. They would be given a straight sword and a helmet for protection. Except the helmet was practically a curse, since it was completely sealed off, preventing the fighter from seeing or hearing anything. The fight would begin as soon as the fighters were placed within close range of one another, with the most popular strategy being the swing and pray method, which in all honesty was the only strategy available. Now the good news is,
but like, respectfully though, the Roman Empire was creative as fudge though, bro. Like, damn, they came up with some crazy stuff.
That judges weren't really needed for these fights, since the winners were very easy to identify, as they were the only contestants still breathing. Now, the crazy part is that this spectacle was seen as comedic relief more than anything. And if you don't think two blind men fighting each other to the death is hilarious, well, you have a lot to learn about comedy. Now, this might not sound that unfair at first, since both men are equally blind and equipped with the same weapon. But think again, since the winner of the match would typically be rewarded with another match, then another one, and another one, and another one.
No! Skip this ad, bro. Anyways, like, no, you gotta battle over and over again.
You get the point.
Anyways, so as I was saying, bro, that's crazy. You gotta fight over and over again. Then yeah, then taking the L is the best option for you, bro.
As you can imagine, a winning streak never really lasted for very long.
True.
Number 9, naval battles. There was nothing more epic than the naval battles of the Colosseum. Also, one of the most unfair, bloody, and expensive. The event would begin by filling the Colosseum with water in around a dozen ships.
But how do you fill it with water, though? Okay.
It's estimated that thousands of prisoners would participate in these events. But let's talk about what made these battles unfair. Now, depending on the starting position of your ship, it could determine your likelihood of survival. Well, at least for a bit longer, as the odds of survival were almost non-existent to begin with. Ships that started between two other ships would make for an easy target, easily creating a 1v2 scenario. Prisoners would invade other ships, killing everyone that stood in their way, while others would simply use the more popular strategy we see today, which is, of course, running away from all fights and sneaking their way to the final round, where you can hope to steal the win with a single kill. The bloody fight would come to an end when there was only one ship or team remaining. As terrible as these battles were, at least they were easy to clean up. The Romans would try their best to remove all the large debris from the water, before the stadium would be flushed like a giant toilet bowl, sending all the remains downstream for another town to deal with. Number 8, gladiator fight. The remains downstream.
Why are you eating the leg? Yo. That's crazy.
For another town to deal with. Number 8, gladiator fights.
The most
popular matches of the Colosseum, with the good matchups typically being saved for the main event. Now, how can two gladiators fighting each other be unfair, you might ask? Well, for starters, the emperors weren't really interested in fairness, as their primary concern was entertainment. And with over 20 different classes of gladiators
Udyrus, Sagittarius, yeah, we know that. Scissor. Okay then.
To choose from, the styles would be mixed and matched based on entertainment alone.
Okay.
Here are some of the most unfair and popular matchups. Retiarius versus Secutor. Retiarius were equipped with a net, a trident, a dagger, and minimal armor, while the Secutor was equipped with a sword, a large shield, a helmet, and heavy armor.
Oh.
Go ahead, pick one.
This one, because he said heavy armor, and let's say if you're not strong enough, you can't carry it all.
If you chose the Secutor, well, GG's, you're dead. As the Retiarius just had to keep his distance and poke at the Secutor. Or better yet, trap him by throwing his net on him, giving him enough time to emote before poking him to death. Alright, let's try another one. Murmillo versus Thorax. Murmillo were armed with a larger
what's head looking
a short
like?
sword, a helmet, and a metal or leather sleeve for protection, while the Thorax was equipped with a light shield, a curved sword, a helmet, and a metal or leather sleeve for protection. Go ahead.
G-Fan, what would y'all pick, bro? I'm going with I think this one. He has the longer sword, I think.
Head, pick one. If you chose the Murmillo, rip, you're dead.
Yeah!
Just had to tire out the Murmillo since he was carrying the heavier shield.
Oh,
As you
okay.
can see, stylistic matchups were a big deal and could easily influence the outcome of a fight. And I know this might come as a shock to some, but not all gladiator fights were to the death. A lot of fights would be called off when a fighter took heavy damage, since good gladiators were very expensive to replace. Number 7, animal battles. Humans were not the only ones to have unfair matchups inside of the Colosseum, since animals were also treated like criminals. They would be enslaved, pinned against each other, and humiliated, and were such a popular spectacle that at times, thousands of animals would be slaughtered in a given day, which was completely unsustainable, driving many animals to extinction. Here are some of the most popular and unfair matchups.
Tiger, lion,
Colosseum.
tiger, lion.
Elephant versus rhino. One of the most famous Colosseum battles.
Chat, what y'all got? G-Fan, what y'all got? I think elephant, bro. Or maybe he can pierce the elephant, but I think elephant.
Battles was when an enraged rhino was pinned against an elephant, with the elephant eventually winning when he decided to cheat by grabbing a spear with its trunk and gouging the rhino's eyes out. Lion versus tiger. This matchup is basically a robbery, as I'm sure the locals would have bet large amounts of money against the guys from out of town, since they knew that the lion always wins. With their
How does the lion win though? Like the tiger has better stats overall.
Only being one recorded incident of a tiger getting the best of a lion.
I don't
Elephant
believe
versus
that.
bull.
Yeah,
As you can imagine, when an animal has over 10,000 pounds on its opponent, it's not really going to be much of a fight, is it? But just to make matters worse, sometimes the elephant and the bull would be chained together, forcing the action. And no matter how the fight begins, it would always end with the bull being turned to soup. Really quickly, here are some of the other animal fights that were very popular. Rhino versus bear. Rhino versus... Here are some of the other animal fights that were very popular. Rhino versus...
We all got. I'm thinking... tough one though. I'm taking the bear. Yeah, I'll take the bear. Yeah, I'm gonna take the bear.
Bear. Rhino versus...
Rhino easily.
Buffalo. Rhino versus...
elephant.
Crocodile versus...
Ooh, this one's a good matchup, I feel like. G-Fan, we all got. I'm gonna put my money on the hippo. Yeah, I'm gonna put my money on the hippo.
This is hippo. Tiger versus bear.
We all got. Tiger. I got tiger. Just look at it, bro. I got tiger, bro.
Bear versus bull. Bear versus wolf.
Bear.
Goro versus scorpion.
What?
Lion versus
lion.
Bull. Lion versus bear.
Lion.
Bear. Lion versus panther.
Ooh. This one. Oh, we all got. I'm gonna go with Black Panther.
Panther, lion versus chimp, lion
Yeah, that's
versus
easy.
hyenas.
I mean, lion.
Lion versus basically any animal the Romans can get a hold of. Number 6, 1 versus 2. This matchup can be unfair for either side depending on the circumstances. Let me explain. There are 2 scenarios in which this matchup can take shape. 1. A high-level gladiator will take on 2 prisoners simultaneously, and as the prisoners try their best to figure out how to properly hold a sword, they will realize that it's very difficult to do so, since their hands are no longer attached. Now, the second scenario is a bit more fair. 3 well-trained gladiators were placed inside of the Colosseum. One gladiator would be given heavy armor and a good weapon,
He can't fight like that.
while his 2 opponents would receive minimal armor and worse weapons.
Oh,
The duo
okay.
would need to work together to defeat the better equipped man. But being partnered up is not as easy as you might think, and does come with its
Betrayal.
own set of challenges. Like knowing whether you should go for the res or attempt to clutch up when your partner inevitably goes down. The last and final way that a gladiator can be outnumbered is during large-scale battles. This one is of course purely based on luck alone and doesn't always mean that you will see a 1v2 matchup, as it just might be a 1v6 depending on how bad your team is. Number 5, woman versus dwarf. Emperor
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Domitian introduced the legendary matchup woman versus dwarf. And I have to admit, this is the only battle on the list where a clear winner was not well documented. But even with the
Yeah.
little information we do have, I have a gut feeling that it just wasn't a fair matchup. I'm just not certain for whom. You see, on one hand, you have a fully grown woman who obviously has the reach advantage, while on the other hand, you have a male dwarf who is much stronger and obviously uses magic. How much stronger? Well, I'm not sure. I did, however, stumble upon this forum where
I'm gonna go. What would y'all pick, bro? What would y'all pick though? I'm going with the dwarf. I'm going with the dwarf. Yeah, I'm going with the dwarf.
the same question back in 2011. Now, sadly, people just replied back with even more interesting questions that we will never get the answers to. And of course, naturally, the entire forum devolved into guys just bragging about how many
I recall. I reckon I could easily take on 3, beat 7, but only if I were a cup.
dwarves they can take on at once. One of the most bizarre things about this matchup was that Emperor Domitian liked to schedule this fight at night, since he preferred this battle when it was illuminated by torchlights. In 2010, a female gladiator's remains were found in England. After they were examined, it was concluded that the woman's legs and arm bones were unusually heavy, suggesting that she had strong muscles.
Damn!
You know, I was originally leaning towards the dwarf, but now I really don't see how they could possibly win. Number 4.
I mean, she died though.
Wild animal hunts. Perhaps one of the most unique spectacles of the Colosseum was the wild animal hunts. Here, the entire Colosseum arena was made to resemble the animal's natural environment. A few men were then brought out to the arena equipped with small shields and weapons. Then for the next few minutes or hours, the arena would be slowly filled with terrifying predators. But if they really wanted to get the crowd on their feet, all the animals would be released at once. Sometimes the men who were fighting the lions, bears, and
It's over 9,000!
panthers would have been well-trained fighters, while other times they would have been condemned criminals who were just
Yeah, I would hide in the trees too, bro. That was my first instinct. I would hide in the trees.
given the death sentence and stood 0 to no chance of winning. Here are some of the animals you could have expected.
Lion, tiger.
Lions, tigers, bears, elephants, rhinos, panthers, leopards, hyenas, wolves, boars, bulls, deer,
Boars, okay.
ostriches, crocodiles,
How the hell did they get an ostrich? Giraffe, okay.
giraffes, camels, and shipwreck.
And why a camel though? Can a camel fight?
Of course, shipwrats were not invited, but they showed up anyways. Number 3, man versus beast. Man versus beast matches were one-on-one battles and were the second most popular spectacle, only behind gladiator fights. Now, there were basically 2 ways that this matchup would be arranged, with both of them tailored for maximum entertainment for the crowd. The first one was when a professional slave or volunteer fighter known as a bestiarius would face off with a terrifying beast. The animal
But what do you consider a beast? I mean, you showed a monkey, right? A gorilla.
It could be anything from a lion,
Oh,
tiger, bear, or any other large and powerful creature. These battles would typically end with the animal being defeated, even if the bestiarius took heavy damage. On the other hand, the second matchup was much more bloody and typically ended with the man being torn to pieces. Here, a criminal or prisoner of war would be forced to face off with the animal. With little to no training, it was only a matter of time before the man would become an anatomy lesson. And it definitely didn't help that the animals were starved for long periods of time before they were brought out,
So the worst is they were bloodlusted, bro.
making them a lot more angry and aggressive. There was even a single lion that took out over 200 men before it was finally defeated, which is obviously a padded record, since it clearly fought nothing but tomato cans. Oh, I should also mention there is another event that was very popular and is somewhat related, where a criminal was tied to a stake and then a wild animal would be released to eat him alive. You know, you would think that this would be one of those situations where if you've seen it once, then you've seen them all type of deal. But apparently some emperors love to show this one quite often.
Which one?
Number 2. Prisoner versus professional gladiator.
Oh.
Easily one of the most unfair matchups of the Colosseum was when prisoners would face off against a professional and seasoned gladiator. Either way, the criminal with 0 to no experience was basically sentenced to death. You see, what could be worse than being invaded, enslaved, and kept inside of a cell for days, just to be given a weapon you have never used, then pushed to the center of the Colosseum floor?
I feel bad for the people in the past, bro. The world was horrible in the past, bro. Like, all these videos I'm reacting to, bro, shows it. I don't want to live in the past, bro.
Only for Spartacus to make his walkout shortly after you. Number 1.
GG's, bro.
Rigged fights. What could be more unfair than rigged matches? Emperor Commodus was definitely the worst offender when it came to rigged matches. The emperor ruled Rome from 180 to 192 AD and was even portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix in the 2000 film Gladiator. Commodus was obsessed with becoming a famous and well-respected gladiator, so much so that he would even compete himself. Well, if you could even call it that. An emperor fighting as a gladiator was unheard of. Now, of course, Commodus had the best training in all of Rome and was actually very talented with a sword, but that wouldn't stop him from rigging fights by secretly injuring men just moments before they were brought out.
Damn, bro. I feel bad, bro.
To face him. His opponents were injured in a way that could be concealed under their armor, but be devastating enough to hinder their performance or make a limb unusable. Another strategy that the emperor would use was simply fighting men with 0 to no experience, making for another easy W. Emperor Commodus would have the longest undefeated record as a gladiator, and it's suspected that he competed hundreds of times. He would also charge the Roman treasury around 25,000 pieces of silver every time he competed. There are many things you could call Emperor Commodus, but one thing you can't say is that he ever discriminated, since animals were also injured and thrown in to face him. Apparently, he killed hundreds of lions, ostriches, some giraffes, and on one occasion even killed 3 elephants that were just laying on the floor. Now, as horrible as this all sounds, this was all just a warm-up, and in November of 192 AD, he held the Polybian Games, a festival that lasted around 2 weeks. There, Commodus shot hundreds of animals with arrows and javelins every single day. But if it makes you feel any better, 1 month after the Polybian Games, Commodus would be strangled to death inside of his bathtub by a professional wrestler named Narcissus.
Oh, but how did he get in? Oh, imagine dying in your bathtub, bro. Oh, how did he get in though?
Which, for a man, that has to be the most embarrassing way to be found dead. Completely naked inside of a cold tub. You can't even explain your way out of that one.
All these freak show stars. Okay, anyways. GFAB, thank you for watching. We're at the end of the video. Yeah, that was wild though. I'm curious, let me know what y'all thought though. What do you think are the worst ones? And I'll see y'all to the next video.